I welcome. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. And today we're interviewing the West Bloomfield School District Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion named Sonja James. How are you doing today?
I am great, Max. How are you doing?
Doing great. Before we begin the interview, I'd like to wish everyone who celebrates Christmas a happy early Christmas, happy belated winter solstice to anyone who celebrates, and happy Hanukkah to everyone who celebrates. Now to the questions. What is your schedule like?
My daily schedule?
If you have a few schedules, you can talk about
Okay.
all three of them.
Well, my daily schedule at work, it starts out every Monday. We have what we call cabinet, where there is myself, the superintendent, assistant superintendent, attendants, and all of our cabinet members. We start out there on Monday, just get a feel of everything that's on everyone's plate for the week, have some conversations about things that are going on in the district and making sure that everyone is on top of it. And then um, I have weekly meetings with different groups. I have monthly meetings with different groups. And right now, this week, I'm going to kind of take it easy because it's break.
Yes, you're probably excited about the snow day giving you an early start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I needed it. And I had family that were able to actually get in this morning. So I have been to the airport too.
Nice. We're
Yes.
talking about this big storm, and we're just like, it's gonna be busy, and we have a lot, but not really.
Max, it's more the wind. The roads aren't too bad. It's really the wind gust.
Yeah. And was it because of the temperatures is why it got canceled mainly?
Well, the anticipation of the heavy dump and the safety and security of our students, because buses have to get through on some roads that really aren't the best roads already. And with buses and getting kids to school safely, I think that it was the right call. And
Yeah.
that all schools in Oakland County were closed. Safety first.
Yes. You can always be
Absolutely.
safe.
Yes.
All right. Do you ever have anxiety while or before you're making a decision?
I would say, Max, I do have a lot of anxiety because when you're making very important decisions, sometimes not everyone's going to be happy with the decisions you make. So, therefore, um, I have to do a lot of research, consult with other people, and before
Making the final decisions.
and looking at ultimately what's in the best interest of our students and their well-being.
Were there ever conflicts after you made the decision that people didn't like about the decision? Were they contacted
We
you?
have not had I have had some that have contacted me because they were not the happiest with some of the decisions that we've made. But I will say that so far within our school district community, we know that we're diverse. And with that diversity comes many different things in terms of students' backgrounds, their in terms of their religion, their ethnicity, socioeconomic. There's just so many things that represent the students in West Bloomfield. And with that representation, it's important for us as a district that make for us to make decisions that is going to be representative of all students. And that could be some things that may not many families may not agree with personally, but as a district, we have to look out for all kids, not just some kids, all students.
And I think you guys are doing a very great job of doing that. And I like to learn about the different backgrounds. So does the RDJ thing they do for seventh grade and the
Yes.
diversity, equity, and inclusion quotes they do in the announcements, does that all come from your department of expertise?
Well, the religious diversity is it's a part of the interfaith um, network where there's actually other school districts that are part of this. And the purpose of that is for students to learn, just like you said, about the different religions and traditions that other people that may be in our district and some may not. So that we're learning not just about ourselves, but we're learning about others. Yes, my department did support the RDJ this year by making sure that the cost for buses were covered, transportation for students getting back and forth, so that was something that the building did not have to take care of. And with regards to the monthly diversity quotes, there's a teacher at Chico Elementary, Miss Jennifer Graham. She is a part, or she is the chairperson for United We Walk. And as a part of United We Walk and out of the diversity committee, that was something that she actually started, I think now maybe 2 years now, that we have been, she's been sending monthly quotes. So I support that, but really I can't take credit for it. That is Miss Jennifer Graham that makes sure we have those quotes every month.
They're very inspired.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What is the easiest thing to make a decision on?
Making a student smile. That's the easiest thing. That's the easiest thing. Max, when it comes to making decisions about students with regards to their learning experiences, there's really not an easy decision because there's so many things that we have to take into account. But the easiest thing in terms of making a decision is to see that decision every time I walk into a building is to see how I could either build a relationship real quick, make a connection, and see a student smile. That's the easiest thing to do.
What is the hardest thing to make a decision on?
Max, that's a great question.
Thank
And
you.
I think the hardest thing to make a decision on is probably where we're going to spend and how we're going to spend our money. That's something outside of my wheelhouse in terms of the decisions. But when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the hardest decision is, where do we start? Where do we start with the work with our teachers? Where do we start with our students? And how do we communicate this all to our families? And I think it's because there's so much when we talk about inclusion and equity that impacts our students each and every day. So I think that decision is probably the hardest, but it's also one of those things that we take our time with and looking at data, our student data. We look at survey results. We look at a multitude of things in terms of which direction we need to go in and what pieces of the work we need to tackle first.
What is your favorite thing about your job?
You know, Max, my favorite thing is that I get to go to all the different buildings. Because as a building principal, I never really got to engage with students outside of my own building, not very often. So for me to be able to spend time at the high school, to spend time at the middle school, to spend time at all the elementaries, OEC, and the different buildings across our district, that is my favorite thing to do. Because, you know, one thing, working out of central office, you're a little removed from the students. So my favorite thing is to go back into buildings.
What's your favorite thing to make a decision on?
My favorite thing to make a decision on is what professional development are we going to engage our students, our staff in? That's probably my favorite thing to make a decision on, because I love learning, I love teaching, and I love helping others grow. And in my role, I'm able to have a greater reach than just the staff that I was the building principal of when I was the principal at Chico Elementary. So for me, I have a far greater reach, and I have the ability to help the entire district. Max, my least favorite thing to make a decision on is discipline, because I believe that every student deserves an opportunity to self-correct. And I think that sometimes when we have to make that decision to suspend or take further action, disciplinary actions with a student, that's a hard thing. Um, that's my least favorite.
Who is your favorite person to work with?
I love working with so many different people. And I have history with so many different people. And I like to think that when I work with someone, that they feel that they are the most special person because of the relationships they have with me. Like Miss McDowell is one of my favorites from when she was a teacher at Chico, Miss Van Nostrand. And I'm going to get myself in trouble by naming people because there's so many that I have great relationships with. And if I call names and I miss someone, their feelings might be hurt. But what I can say is that I truly enjoy working with the staff members in different buildings that I go to all the time. I don't know every staff member, but when I do have an opportunity to work with some very, very closely and build those relationships, that's what's important to me. And I hope that they feel the same after working with me, that they know that I care about them, first as people, two as educators, and three, the work that we are embarking upon.
Says you're one of her favorite people to work with.
Oh, I love her.
It's Mrs. McDowell, Dean of Students at WVMS. I thought a fun question to ask would be about the time a student called Miss James and I twins.
Can you tell me a little more about?
Yeah, Miss McDowell, I was actually in a classroom observation, and it was her evaluation, and a student wasn't feeling so well. We were sitting at the back table talking, so we had the student come back to us, and as Miss McDowell and I were talking to each other, because like I said, we work so closely together. It's almost as if we could finish each other's sentences. And she paused and looked at us and said, "You two are like twins. You sound like twins." And it is, and I don't think that was the first student that ever said we either sound just alike or we act just alike, but this one named it as twins. So it is, again, it goes back to those relationships that you build with people. And even though she was the teacher and I was the building principal, we worked so closely together with our students. And they knew that when they heard Miss James' voice, that Miss McDowell was in line with with what Miss James would say. And they knew that when they heard Miss McDowell's voice, that Miss James was in line with what Miss McDowell would say as well, too. So yes, we had some fun times at Chico Elementary, some great times together.
Now, what is your career history? I've heard you filled many roles, from going to a principal at an elementary school to going to a middle school principal to becoming the diversity, equity, and inclusion director. Can you tell me some other roles you've done along the way with your career history?
Before I moved to Michigan, I'm originally I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I taught in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I taught in what we call I taught second grade, I taught fifth grade. I also taught in our gifted and talented program, where we would have students come to our center from other buildings within our feeder pattern. And I left Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I taught 3 years. I lived at 3 years in Kingston, Jamaica at the American International School. And there I taught fifth grade. With that, I had students whose parents were either diplomats or they worked for USAID, and those students traveled to different countries with their parents and went to many American schools in many different countries. So I had students that were from Brazil, South Africa, Germany. I had students from all over the place, as well as American students who had traveled and lived in so many different places. And then I came here to West Bloomfield, and I taught fifth grade at Doherty for a year. I became the assistant principal at Orchard Lake Middle School when it was Orchard Lake Middle School, became the principal, left Orchard Lake after 9.5 years and went over to Chico, was at Chico Elementary for 10 years. And now in my role as Executive Director of Educational Equity and Inclusion. Yeah.
When did you become the Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion?
Last year was my first.
Is it your favorite role that you've covered in education?
You know what, Max? It is becoming one of my favorites. I think my favorite role was when I was a second grade teacher, believe it or not. And that was right out of college. And when I taught second grade, I had the ESL class, which was English language learners. And the students that I taught at that time were so diverse and from all over, but they spoke very little English. And that's when I was teaching in Miami, Florida. So that's one of my favorite roles. This role here is becoming one of my favorites because I'm learning a lot about it. I get to help others learn a lot. And again, I get to be with so many different people with across our district.
Is it a new role in the district, or has it been around for a few years where you just
It was a brand new role, and the role came out of in 2020. Our Board of Education passed the anti-racism resolution. And in that resolution, they looked at things in terms of how we would, things that we believed in as a district. And as a district, looking at some of our policies and procedures, looking at our hiring practices, and thinking of ways to ensure that equity would be, we would have equitable practices across the district. Now in Oakland County, there are many other school districts that also has this role as well too. And we meet monthly as equity leaders to discuss new initiatives. We discuss things at the county level. We look at new laws that are coming down the pipe. And we also share ideas about things that are happening within our districts.
now out of all the places you have worked at, what's your like favorite places that you've worked at going down the list from favorite to least favorite?
Say one of my favorites was living in Jamaica and teaching in Jamaica because I just loved the island. And I also love the opportunities to learn more about the different cultures that were there.
What does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion to me means that we want to ensure that every student that walks through the doors of any building in West Bloomfield are seen, heard, and know that they belong where we are, in every classroom and in every building. And for me, the diversity is knowing that all students come with different things to bring to the table, experiences, exposures, and ideas, thoughts, and that every student that comes through our doors need to know that in the books that we read, and the questions that we ask, and the videos that we see, that they see a reflection of themselves, or that they see that they can identify with something that we have in front of them all the time. And that's even looking at our teaching staffs, looking at our staff across the district, so that representation matters to me. And representation should matter to everyone, so that every student has an opportunity to have someone that they identify with in the building. And that's what it means to me.
Every teacher I've met, if it's a paraeducator, a teacher, principal, dean of students, or even just anyone at the ACS building, does a great job of doing that, making sure
Thank
that
you.
they listen to everyone, hear, and even make it so that if someone needed to talk, that they could.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that, Max, because we want to make sure that every student has the same sentiment.
What do you have in plans to make diversity, equity, and inclusion in the West Bloomfield School District better?
Well, professional development for our staffs, looking at what we call equity audits. We haven't done one yet, but that's something that we need to do as a district, taking a look at the books that we have in our libraries and our classrooms, so to make sure that they're representative of our student population. So that, I don't know if you've heard the term windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, so that students can look out and see people or read books that represent them. They have an opportunity to learn about others and others to learn about them, so that it's just not one size fits all approach. It is an individualized approach so that everyone is included and has a sense of belonging within our district. So that's going to take some time. Also looking at our building policies and procedures to make sure that when we're making decisions, they're equitable decisions across our district, that everyone doesn't get equal, everyone gets what they are in need of. Because what you may need, Max, may be something totally different than what another student needs. And how do we do that as a district? Because every student comes in and may need something a little different. And what does that mean for us as teachers and educators and leaders in our district?
Is yours like a timed role like the board is if you have a certain amount of years as this before, or do you stay here until on this role?
I have a contract that I think runs every 2 years. So it's a renewable contract, and that's just like our teachers and our superintendent. We are on what we call contracts. I hope my role, even if I decide to leave our district, that it's a role that will always be here, because we always need to ensure that all of our students, all of our staff are represented, and all of our students and all of our staff have an opportunity to learn as much about each other and others as we possibly can.
What's something you're working on right now?
Right now, I am working on a couple of things. Right now, I'm working on professional development for our high school staff. I'm working with our African American Parent Network to get some things in place for a Saturday Academy for students. I am also working with bringing in a program entitled Pretty Brown Girl. And I'm also just working with buildings to see what they specifically need in the area of equity.
What is your education?
My education, I have my master's and specialist from Nova Southeastern University. I have my bachelor's degree from Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach, Florida. That's where I did my undergrad. And all my graduate work was at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
What did you major in?
I started my career I started my degree in nursing. And I said, I'm not sure I can really be a nurse. I changed majors to go into education. So I have an elementary education background. That's my undergrad. My grad is in reading, in educational leadership.
How is the school district addressing the hatred like anti-Semitism and other things?
Well, right now, Max, I am working with Carla Chenault. She is with the ADL, and we are looking at bringing No Place for
No Hate School, which is working on getting into the middle school,
into our high school. I have worked with some of our staff members with regards to language and how to handle slurs when they hear it, how to address it. And again, beginning some work with our students in terms of the use of words and language that really is inappropriate. And we know that there's a lot in terms of racial slurs and anti-Semitic things that are happening within society. And our goal is to make sure that we limit and possibly, if we can, eliminate those things in our district. Are we there yet? We're not. Is it a work in progress? It is. And when things occur, we deal with them appropriately. And it's not always just a disciplinary action. It's also it's an opportunity to learn for our students and our staff members that if we need to, in terms of anti-Semitic or just derogatory terms and slurs in general. So when we see it or hear it, we deal with it. We not only discipline, but we educate as well as to why those things are not appropriate and unacceptable.
And as of right now, what are some of those consequences that the district does if they hear or see it? Anything
Well,
like that?
we do when we have instances where there are incidents, we do adhere to our code of conduct. But like I said, it's not just a disciplinary piece, it's also an opportunity for learning and growth. Because if we only suspend or give disciplinary actions without learning, then the people that have violated someone else by their words or their actions, you get the discipline, but if you don't get the learning, you never grow. And our goal is to make sure that we're continually helping to build solid, respectful, caring adults as they move into the world, but students, that we respect each other for who we are, our backgrounds, our beliefs, and know that we can all coexist because we all have our own stories to tell. We all have our individual practices that we have, but as students, as a school community, we can exist together, and knowing that we appreciate, that we respect, and we learn about each other. And that's what makes us stronger as a district.
And that was the final question I had. I would like to thank you for joining, and I would also like to thank Miss Lisa Graff for composing the email and everyone else who participated in giving me questions to ask. If you ever have a question you want or someone to interview, just put it in the comments, and I will work to add that into my script. Thank you for
Thank you,
joining.
Max. I appreciate you.
I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. You
You're welcome.
enjoy the remainder of your break. And if you
I
find in
will.
your edits that we need to redo some, we can do it when we get back to school. How about that?
Yes. All
All
right.
right. You enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Have a great break.
Thank you, Max. Bye-bye. You
Happy
as well.
holidays, everyone.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
All right.